Hello and welcome to On the Corner, the official podcast of pitcherlist.com. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined on this trip down the top 200 again by the man himself, Nick Pollack. Nick, we say this probably literally every episode, but we're going to try and be quick this episode, guys.
We really are. We're both swamped with so many things.
We got stuff
and
going
Eric
on.
is exhausted, and I'm going to be exhausted. I'm doing this, and then I'm live streaming, and then I'm potting tonight, and so it's like 8 hours of streaming for me.
Yes, it's going to be a long day, but you know what? We got to give you the content. We got to talk to you about the pitchers. Yeah. It's just important stuff, and we're not going to skimp. No. We're going to go quick, but we're not going to withhold any important details from you. So again, just as a quick reminder before we dive right in, we are going through Nick's top 205 pitchers at a time in each episode. You'll see all the pitchers as you get the episodes. You can go back and listen to them in order. You don't have to. You can come back and listen to it after the fact. You can listen to it for a specific pitcher. Whatever you want, we'll be here for you. We've been dancing around this first pitcher. We're on number 61 right now. 61 through 65 in this episode. We've been dancing around this gentleman for a long time because he didn't pitch at all last year, coming off a shoulder injury after he was coming off there was a weird nerve issue seasons before. A lot of injuries for Brandon Woodruff. He is back in Milwaukee. We assume as of right now he will be healthy for opening day. We've seen him be a top 20 pitcher in the past. You have him 61. I assume much of this is health related.
Oh, it completely is. It's a shoulder injury. And after missing such significant time with the shoulder injury, it's very confusing as to what we'll see and how he'll be. If you want to imagine that he's just completely healthy when he comes back, I mean, Brandon Woodruff is a top 15 pitcher easily. He hasn't pitched like one for 4 years. Even in 2019, which is the bad one, was a 3.62 ERA with a 1.14 whip. And that was 2019, where he still had a 29% K rate. So I hope he's the same guy. It's just so difficult to discern what we're going to get from Woodruff. I feel there's more haze here than, say, just the clarity of, Strider, Tommy John. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think with a shoulder injury like this, it's much more concerning. So that's the reason why he's here. Yeah,
we'll talk about him, but I'm just let the people know now. Like March rolls around, what are you looking for? What do you need to see from Brandon?
Good question. Yeah, so I just need to see the velocity back. Really, if he's at 95, 96 and sitting there, and I say this a lot, you're going to see many reports that say he topped out at or it. That is not the verbiage we want. It's usually about 2 ticks lower than that, or 3 even, for what the average fastball velocity is. So you want to see sitting 95 or higher. And it was a good fastball, 17 inches of vert, 6.7 extension with 1.2 height adjusted VAA, which essentially says, it's a solid above average fastball at 96. You located it well and then paired it with a sinker that he spotted really well arm side. Has a changeup and slider as well. Changeup gets a lot of the whiffs. Slider is a good strike pitch. I mean, it's all just good command, utilizing this breadth of arsenal. For Woodruff, it's just, I mean, you're not going to really get the volume, are you? Are they going to be careful with him with the shoulder injury before? It's just all straight. But yeah,
remember,
as long as he has velocity, fine.
They signed him to a 2-year deal, and that included last year.
Yeah.
So I believe he's just on essentially a 1-year contract.
Right.
He is a little bit older. So the Brewers, if they're contending again, and I think we have every expectation to believe the Brewers will contend again, they may just want to get what they can get out of him and not really worry about what's going to happen in the future. But
at the same time, you can't just overthrow him.
Sure.
You have to be careful with him coming back from this injury too. So it might be something where we see the first couple months of Woodruff being slow and then building up for the second half. I don't know. I'm just excited that he could be pitching in full in 2025.
Would love to see that. You were really excited about the number 62 ranked starter as well. In the spring, you chatted him up a lot. Many people drafted him because of your chatter. The start of the season didn't go great, but we had a really great stretch in the middle of the year, like in the heat of the summer. And so what are you expecting in 2025 for your number 62 ranked starter, Ryan Nelson?
Yeah, so Ryan Nelson, his four-seamer is great in that he just throws strikes within the upper third of the zone, and guys just can't handle that when he does it. It's not always the case, though. A lot of the season, it was a scatter plot of four-seamers, and The vert is over 17 inches on this pitch. I mean, especially when he went to the Trop for one game, it was like 20 inches of vert, which was so fun. But he needs something else. The cutter, the slider, changeup, none of those really took form as a proper number 2. They helped. Sometimes the cutter was really good. And I remember in the spring, it was far better than what I saw most of the days during the season. And maybe we get that back from Ryan Nelson. That's the biggest thing I'm going to be looking for and why he's a part of this crew. I mean, we've really started with Woodruff at look, everyone else beforehand, I'm going to draft and very, very likely hold through the year. Starting with Woodruff, it's much more of the quick decisions of saying, am I seeing the things that I want to see to give me faith? And otherwise, I'm going to drop somewhat early. And with Ryan Nelson, if I don't see any development in those secondaries and it's still just fastball reliant, I'm not actually going to buy that he's going to have that same run that he did at the end of the season again. So that's really where we are with Ryan Nelson. Don't get overcommitted to this. It is a good stab early because if the cutter does become a consistent pitch that's over 20% usage, 20-25%, and is actually effective in the zone consistently, then, okay, we've actually got something going here. Good news is that you'll know pretty early if he does or doesn't.
I do also have some pitch development concerns with the Diamondbacks organization, generally speaking. We've been looking for significant improvement from Brandon Pfaadt for a few years. That hasn't happened. They hired Brent Strom, who's one of the most highly regarded pitching coaches in baseball, and suddenly he can't manage a pitching staff and got fired. And I just don't buy that he suddenly became a bad pitching coach. I think there's some developmental and philosophical things within that organization that have prevented their pitchers from really taking a step forward. And so that gives me a little pause that Ryan Nelson, that Brandon Pfaadt, some of these guys will actually like fix the issue that they need to fix in order to make that leap. But who knows? They're going to bring in a new pitching coach. Maybe that changes the philosophy in the organization and we could see a jump next year.
Absolutely.
We're going to move on to your number 60, third ranked starter. Oh my God, I'm blanking on your nickname for him.
The Pasta Pirate.
The Pasta Pirate. It's the Pasta Pirate. I was going to call him the Spaghetti Pirate. And I was like, that's not it. It's the Pasta Pirate. It's the Pasta Pirate. It's Spencer Arrighetti. Arrighetti, another guy we talked earlier on an earlier episode about Rono Blanco getting a shot in the Astros rotation due to the injuries to McCullers and Luis Garcia and Jose Urquidy and things like that. Arrighetti also got that opportunity and struggled early. But made some changes to his approach in the second half of the year and looked like a better pitcher in the second half of the year. And he has a pretty solid minor league track record behind him, which I think should make us feel pretty confident about him having a rotation spot, even if Garcia is healthy and Lance McCullers by some magical potion gets healthy and Urquidy is back. Like I think Arrighetti has a job.
Yeah, so Urquidy was released, I believe, by the Astros.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
And McCullers is apparently healthy. I have him at the tail end of this list of just kind of like, look, if he's healthy, we got to give that a shot, kind of situation. With Arrighetti, it's a weird case of having control with some pitches. That is fastballs around 70% strike rate and cutter well above 70% strike rate, especially against right-handers. But curveball and sweeper are highly inconsistent, often underneath 60% strike rates. And also while watching him, it's not precise. I've seen many games where he's trying to go away and he comes inside and it gets away from him. Goes, he's so filthy. I'm like, yeah, but it's not what he was trying to do. I have less faith in Arrighetti stepping on a mound and being like, I'm going to dominate today. Right. And really demanding it and making you feel confident. I still feel as if we're going to see some sways from Arrighetti that makes it feel like he's a hipster, headache-inducing pitcher stifling the entire roster, where he's going to have those games of 8 to 10 strikeouts and then other ones where he walks too many batters. And it's just, what are we getting this time around? It's actually kind of funny is I was in on Arrighetti maybe midway at the season thinking like, okay, cool. The fastball is good. It's flat. Even though against the right-handers that had just an 8% swing strike rate last year, which is just, oh no, you got to improve that. Also, I hope that no one can hear my radiator gnomes clinking away in the background. That's so wild. Look at this lovely microphone.
Yeah, can't hear anything.
Welcome to New York apartments, where we don't have central heating. We have to turn on the radiator that clinks away.
The Timothy Chalamet skit on SNL?
No.
Oh, I'll send it to you afterwards. But he he is mocking like a modern hip hop artist and he sings one quote unquote song where he just goes clink, 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 and whatever, and he does like these sound effects. But people just basically started reposting it on Instagram as like, this is what my radiator does in the winter.
Oh, yep.
And you can't
I
control.
thought you were going to go a whole thing like Timothée Chalamet is the guy in the radiator clanking away with a hammer. I would watch that too. We're going to go quickly. Anyway, Arrighetti, I just get a little weirded out that he's not really a good command guy, and his stuff can be very good. The cutter, really, actually, the curveball and the sweeper are both swing and miss potential. The four-seamer still gets really hit hard. It's really about establishing the cutter in the zone with that four-seamer effectively enough that the curveball and sweeper can take over. I'm fine early on seeing if he's just rolling and doing great, and obviously the strikeouts can be there, but I get the sense that you're going to have a lot of headache this year with Spencer Arrighetti.
Yeah. But a headache on a good team, maybe worth taking a gamble on early. And as you have said many times before, these are great picks towards the tail end of a draft because you'll know pretty early on if it's going to work or not, and you can move on if you need to. Your 64th ranked pitcher is somebody who I don't even have ranked at all. And we'll talk about him after this break. So your number 64th ranked starter is Tampa Bay Rays pitcher Drew Rasmussen. And I don't have him ranked because I don't know that Rasmussen is in the starting rotation, and that's the only reason.
Totally understand that. But but if he is,
sure, yeah,
you want him.
I get it. If he is, you want him. If he is, you want him. I think they have a glut of starting pitchers right now, and he has a long track record as a well above average to borderline very good reliever. And so I just wonder if he's the easier name to keep in the bullpen and let the other guys stay in the rotation. But again, that is my only concern. Obviously, if you're, once March rolls around or whatever, you might have a better idea. Earlier than that, depending on like if the Rays go out and sign another starting pitcher, like if that rotation gets muddled even further. We saw him on the mound at the end of the season coming back from injury, which is nice. He didn't have tons of innings, but we know he ended the year healthy. So our expectation is that he begins next year healthy. And obviously the Rays changes that they made to him back in 2023 unlocked a new level for him as a starting pitcher. And so you seem to be buying in on Drew Rasmussen.
I mean, look, again, I've said this is about early decisions and guys you want to chase that have obvious upside if it works, and also to know who to get rid of if it doesn't. I really wrestled with this one a ton, and at the end of the day, Drew Rasmussen as a starter has been amazing. Actually, since 2021, really in only 15 innings as a prospect. So his chips, that is his career high, ignoring prospect status, or essentially of ERA, was 2.84. His career high ignoring prospect status of WHIP is 108. That's for 4 years and over 200 innings, like 250 innings. That's insane. That's actually that's bonkers. So what does he do? Drew Rasmussen throws cutters that are really hard to hit constantly. Throws 96 miles per hour or so on his fastball with tons of IVB on it. It's like over 17 inches of it. A good slider as well. A sinker that's tough to hit. I dig this a ton. And the fact that he unlocked strikeout ability in 2023 before he got hurt and got Tommy John is just, it's exciting to say the least with that sweeper involved. I think it's a case where, look, if the Rays are going to let him start, then you're not going to drop him. Mm-hmm. You just know this. You're just going to have Drew Rasmussen and be really happy with it. And you're going to be super happy they have him instead of Spencer Arrighetti likely, or Ryan Nelson. I think there's a higher risk of him not. So he's underneath those guys. But he's the ultimate pick that I would go for just because to drop him. It's easy. And if you're not dropping it, that means he's in the rotation, which is clearly a benefit. It's not he's starting and I don't know. It's starting great. So I'm all for taking Drew Rasmussen at this point in the mid 60s of your 12 teamers because you're expecting to drop these guys anyway.
Yeah. And that's basically the same exact case for your number 65 ranked starting pitcher who missed all of last year with injury. But it's important to note, and I have been thinking about how this injury could have possibly happened, and it boggles the mind and also scares me. But Dustin May was sidelined for all of this year with a torn esophagus, and he had surgery to repair a torn esophagus and he had stomach repair. It apparently happened in the middle of dinner one night, and then the next day he had pain in his throat and stomach, and he had torn his esophagus. Who knows? I mean, maybe it was a choking thing. I don't know.
No, I think it was just food poisoning, and then it just led to too much. Yeah. Anyway, poor Dustin May.
Well, yes. The point of that was to note that the missed year had nothing to do with another arm injury. We know that Dustin May has had his fair share of arm injuries. He hasn't thrown over 56 innings in an MLB season. But this will not be him returning from an arm injury. It will be him returning from something else. He might be in the rotation. My big question for you is, where are the strikeouts? Because when you see the raw stuff that he has, the movement on his pitches, I mean, how much that sinker moves or that two-seamer moves, whatever you want to call it. Like, you look at a guy who should be at like a 26, 27, 28% strikeout rate. And his MLB career strikeout rate is 21.6 or 22.6.
Yeah.
So do you see a path for that? Or do you think that Dustin May's ceiling is just as a solid ratio arm on a really good team?
Yeah. So to put this bluntly, he's really hard to hit. His hit per 9, even though it's a really small sample of just, I want to say it's right under 100 innings, like 90 innings. Hit per 9 that time has been well under 7, pretty much hovering 6. And I also like to think that the Dodgers are generally good at hit suppression. They're one of the best shifters in the outfield to suppress fly ball outs, to suppress hits in the outfield. And of course, they generally have good infield defense as well, especially Freddie Freeman now at first base. And Dustin May, sure, you might be questionable about the strikeouts with them. I think we all know that we haven't really seen it play out fully. I mean, you have multiple small samples. You have 2021 of 23 innings, he has a 38% K rate. In 2022, six games, you have 23% K rate. Oh, you have 9 of them, 48 innings. It was an 18% K rate also when he was hurt and got Tommy John, right? So there are a lot of ways to look at it. At the end of the day, he throws hard. He has a cutter that has showcased whiff potential in the past game with the curveball. I want to believe that Dustin May is essentially like a 23% strikeout guy who's going to be a volume arm, and you don't want to release him on your team if he's pitching regularly, right? I see them essentially as a Holly kind of arm. And the fact that the Dodgers right now have Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin in that rotation kind of tells me, okay, that's what their plan is right now. Yes, let's say they get Sasaki, let's say they get Kikuchi, let's say they add the free agents, 100%. Last year we had this question about, say, like Emmett Sheehan versus Gavin Stone, and I say, great, if he's not in the rotation, I drop him. It's another case like Drew Rasmussen. If Dustin May is starting out of the gate, you're going to want him on your team. I'm not saying that he's going to be a SP1 caliber arm. I do think that Dustin May is good enough to be, startable all the time in a 12-teamer and not feel like you need to drop him. It's that simple to me.
We have talked many times on this podcast about like the infatuation with quote unquote league winners and rest of season upside and things like that. And if you can snag one of those guys, more power to you. If you're getting Jack Flaherty off waivers early in the year, Luis Gil off waivers early in the year, great. But if you're getting a pitcher off waivers early in the year who might not be in the rotation in 2 months, but for the 4 to 6 weeks you have him, he's going to be good. That is also valuable because you're banking that production. So like, yes, if your choice is between a Luis Gil type or a Dustin May type, and you choose Luis Gil because you think there's a longer runway, by all means, you can make that choice. But don't ding a pitcher like Dustin May too much early in the season because you're not sure if he's going to be in the rotation come July. You can weight it into the decision, but just the production you're going to get from him is going to be valuable enough. And then you make the June decision in June based on where your roster is at.
Yeah, there's a lot of assumptions that people make about how rotations are going to go. My favorite phrase that I always say when it comes to rotations, 6-man rotations are like the Fellowship of the Ring. It starts off with a lot of people in grand visions, but ends with two men barely surviving. And if you look at the Dodgers rotation, that's exactly what happened this past year. And, you can go into saying, oh, no, they have 6. There's no room, all that kind of stuff. Right. You never know what's going to happen by July. Right. And honestly, if Dustin May is performing in that rotation, the Dodgers rarely remove guys when they're regularly going every 5 or 6. They'll shimmy them in and out. They'll maybe give an extra day of rest or something like that. They recognize that they have to keep their depth while not getting people completely out of rhythm a lot. It's really not a thing that I would worry about for the future. I mean, especially when it comes to a guy after, pick 60 of starting pitchers. Do not think about August at this point. You're thinking about putting yourself in the best position out of April, out of the next few weeks,
right?
And putting yourself in a situation where either you have something that you like, or you can now have that open roster spot so you can pick up that league winner of Jack Flaherty and Tanner Houck for the first half or whatever it is. You also had guys, by the way, in June, July. Remember the league winners of 2023? Tarek Skubal and Cole Reagans. That showed up in July. That didn't show up in April and May. So you never know how the season goes on. Don't plan for that. And really good ICR, really good weak contact inducer. Dustin May should be a benefit to your teams, especially with the winning culture of the Dodgers.
Yeah. And that is what we are here to help you with during the season, preseason, helping you make those pitching decisions when the time comes. We're going to continue to do that with the rest of the top 200, which we'll get to on the next episodes of On the Corner. I am Eric Samulski, the Pelican.
I'm Nick Pollack, the Lion.
And we'll see you on the next episode of On the Corner.
Let's keep it going, baby.
We'll start this one.
We're doing more.
Right.
Thank you all so much for watching us live on Twitter or on YouTube, by the way. We are doing this series. We're trying to get as many of these done before I go to Hong Kong. Eric, I think we're going to do like 80 to 100 on Monday. And then I don't know if we had plans after that. Maybe we're going to do like 100 to 120 and that's it, and call it,
I think so. I think the plan was to try to do 2 next week before you get out of here.
Yeah, and that's that. So then we'll do it up to 120. The rest of the 200, I mean, you don't really need us for that. But we're going to be actually putting these out as podcasts, I think, through December is the plan, as sets of 5.
Yes.
So
and then
you guys are getting an early preview now.
Boom, boom, boom. And then we'll have some free agent talk and some mocks and all that kind of stuff.
All that good stuff. Yeah, we got to go over your mock draft. You got to go over my mock draft.
We got to do it.
Oh, boy. We'll do that in just
we also got to get into the next episode. So
we do. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to On the Corner, the official podcast of PitcherList.com. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined by the man himself, Nick Pollack, as we continue looking at his top 200, 5 pitchers at a time.
What is happening? We're doing this.
A lot.
We got to do it. We got to move.
We're going fast, people. Continue to go fast. We got a lot to say, actually, about this next guy, so we're going to dive right in because I talked about him at First Pitch Arizona. You've talked about him a bunch this year. I'm a little surprised that Clark Schmidt is down at 66 for you. And so let's talk about, we've talked about the emphasis of the cutter for him and how it really kind of changed him a little bit as a starting pitcher, helped with his splits issues. Why is Clark Schmidt here at 66 and not up with like the Walker Buehler, Yusei Kikuchis of the world, where I feel like it's not a huge, you're talking about like late 40s, early 50s. You're not talking about a huge gap, but I just think doesn't he kind of have that upside to like put up a low 3s ERA and a really good team with potential for wins and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't know how much I buy him being a 26% strikeout rate guy. I mean, that's you mentioned Kikuchi. It's like, well, Kikuchi, I can see 25% plus strikeout pretty easily. And with Clark Schmidt, I'm really happy that he embraced the cutter this past year at a 17% swing strike rate on both lefties and righties when throwing that pitch this season. But he doesn't have an overpowering fastball. The sinker is hoping to do enough against right-handers, and it actually didn't do good things with 48% ICR this past year. I'm worried also about his efficiency. He had a 5.3 innings per game this season, which is not fun. All those were starts. And I'm not quite at the point of Clark Schmidt dominating every single game, and deservedly so. I'm a little hesitant about it. I think he nibbled a bit this year. 8.5% walk rate, I think, is a product of that. Still coming into his cutter, but I think there is some regression here. I don't think that he is a sub-3 ERA. I don't think that Clark Schmidt, again, is that 25% plus strikeout rate guy. And I really wrestled with it. Do I put him at the bottom of that Holly tier with, say, Yu Darvish or so? Do I put him all the way back instead of this upside flyer tier back to where Christopher Sanchez is of this is a Toby kind of player? It really was tough for me to discern where to place Clark Schmidt. I want to believe you have him and you don't drop him. Also, being on the Yankees does help. He should get wins this year. He's going to be defiantly in that rotation this season. I don't think that, say, like Marcus Stroman would kick him out or anything like that. Garrett Cole was removed in the beginning, and that really opened the door for him until he got hurt. But with Clark Schmidt, I like him, but I don't know if he quite does enough to say, like, oh, yeah, I can't drop Clark Schmidt on my team. He's just too good. I think it's going to be kind of middling throughout the year.
I have him around like Eflin, Lugo, which is kind of like where you have like that Yu Darvish tier, the end of that tier. That's where I have him right now.
He hasn't proven himself as that efficient pitcher yet.
Agreed. Yes, he is not as proven as Eflin or Lugo. I'm leaving him there because I believe it, but I understand we haven't seen it in the same way, the same track record.
It's close. It's very close. I think it's just because it's a worse. He doesn't have the sinker that he places as well as those. It's cutter, sweeper, really, and knuckle curve. But yeah, I wish I had that better sinker against righties.
Speaking of track record, your number 67th ranked pitcher does not have a long track record as well, because he was a reliever like Clark Schmidt and was converted to a starter, and then was out pretty much all of this last year. Came back at the very end, and it's Tampa Bay Rays lefty Jeffrey Springs. We talked on one of the last episodes about Drew Rasmussen, and we talked about the fact that somebody might get squeezed from the Tampa Bay rotation. I think you and I are both of the mind that Springs makes it in. What did you see from Springs this year in terms of just the quality of his arsenal coming back from injury, and you assume fully healthy and a full starting pitcher going into 2025?
Yeah, I mean, so the first two starts, he wasn't quite there yet. And then all of a sudden he just clicked in. It's like, okay, cool. Here's my changeup. Here's my four-seamer. Like, let's go. It's a lefty with an elite changeup. And I recognize that, yeah, this is very good. When he does start, it's just a question of, is that arm fatigue that he had in the second half last year is something real? Is he okay and fine? And if so, I think he's a Holly easily. I have Springs here because, again, I like the fact that it is an easier decision early.
Right.
And I actually debated between him and Clark Schmidt a ton, because I do feel that we'll get more clarity on Springs as opposed to Schmidt early on. But Schmidt, I think, has a higher ceiling as far as volume goes for 2024. It's just kind of balancing those two. But yeah, Springs has showcased that, look, I can get a ton of righties out with my changeup and four-seamer. And then when it comes to lefties, it's just about spying that slider a little bit better than he has in the past, down and away, as opposed to kind of over the plate more. But yeah, I think it's a good enough skill set and honestly really good command than you normally see. So it's just a question of health. And I totally understand in deeper leagues where you really need to commit harder that you'd be dropping Springs further, because there's so much haze about the health, and it's not SP1 upside when you do have a question of health. Still, as long as Springs is pitching, I think we should be saying, all right, Springs is pitching, he's a Holly. And that's a really good thing to have on your teams that you won't want to drop when he's on the mound.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have him 60th, so slightly above, but we're kind of in the same range, in the same tier, in the same discussion of some of these guys. We're going to talk about three exciting young pitchers, but we're going to do that right after this break.
We're moving, baby.
So your number 68 pitcher is not quite as young as the two pitchers that we'll talk about after him. But it's somebody that we really like. Last year was his first full year in the rotation. Well, full, but he had an injury. But it's Tiger starting pitcher Reese Olson, who we talked about early in the year as like incredibly unlucky in wins for a guy who was pitching as well as he was and couldn't buy a win. Then he got hurt. He had a few starts, I think it was like 4 starts maybe, where he just kind of got pounded, like did not pitch well. And then it seemed to click back in again. But do you think that there is still room for growth for Reese Olson heading into 2025? And do we think he's locked into a rotation spot?
So first and foremost, I got to say, Reese Olson just destroyed right-handers. His slider, a 31% usage, and a 15% ICR. 15 across 31% usage with a 60% strike rate and a 21% swing strike rate. That is just unheard of. While he also had a sinker, he threw 45% of the time and about 30% ICR. Like, guys just couldn't do anything with this. The changeup itself had a 28% swing strike rate. It's bonkers. He shouldn't be throwing that four-seamer much at all, but when he did, I mean, he only threw 6% of the time. It was a lot of times in 2-strike counts. Trying to go upstairs with it didn't really do that. And I'm honestly like, don't try and throw fastballs away. I don't like this. This isn't a good offering. Don't do this anymore. Okay, cool, thanks. But against left-handers, it's a little bit more of a struggle. And you would think, what? He's got a really good changeup. That should be just so good. Only a 57% strike rate with it. That's the big difference. That's really where the growth would come, in my view. That Reese Olson has an absurdly good slider. And actually, I don't think I've seen this, a 25% usage slider to lefties, opposite-handed, with a 74% strike rate and 24% swing strike rate. It was so good against both sides, consistently getting strikes. It was his money pitch. It was just the thing that he always threw. And having that changeup as that real nullifier is massive. The other issue is he doesn't really have a fastball to use effectively against lefties. The four-seamer is bad. There was 37% of the time against left-handers. And Reese Olson does not do well with this pitch. 5% swing strike rate, just a 61% strike rate overall, and high 42% ICR. He's allowing bad contact on it. So when I look at this with Reese Olson, I see a guy who needs something different in a cutter or something else that isn't the four-seamer to help with lefties. It can't just be the slider and changeup. And against righties, he's got it made. Don't touch the four-seamer whatsoever. He needs a little bit more consistency just overall with that changeup feel. So there is another level to have there. It's hard to bank on guys that don't have a really good fastball, let me say, for just a sinker to the same handedness, right? Like, you have the opposite hand batter. You need a cutter or a four-seamer or sinker that is just, okay, this is what I'm going to use. This is what we complained about with Clark Schmidt. Schmidt leaned into the cutter. He got better with it. I've been like pairing Reese Olson and Clark Schmidt together because both of them have this inconsistency and lack of polish towards being those 6-inning consistent guys yet. However, they both have the ability to become that in the year ahead. Do I think that Reese Olson can become a 25 to 30% strikeout guy? Honestly, maybe, if that changeup consistency is there, considering how much whiffs he get with both the slider and the changeup. But because the four-seamer and sinker don't get any whiffs like at all, it's probably going to be hard for him to do that unless he has a cutter introduced there. So overall, I like Reese Olson, but I don't know if he's just going to be slider and that's it really entering the season, or if the changeup is going to actually take that next step and become a more reliable 60 to 65% strike rate and make it so that he really can just push that four-seamer into his back pocket and just go secondary focused.
Yeah. I think you and I are both kind of in the same boat with him. Like, I have him ranked right around guys like Ryan Nelson, Taj Bradley, Mackenzie Gore, Brian Bayo, or guys that maybe I'm a little higher on than you, but they're all guys who you say, like, there's like one or two things here that could actually unlock like a huge jump in value for you. I think maybe Olson, well, Nelson too, but those two guys seem to have like the safest floor as they currently are constructed, right? Like, those pitchers, if they didn't change at all, might be better than what you'd get from like a Taj Bradley, Brian Bayo, Mackenzie Gore. But yeah, I think they're all in a realm of like, there's another level here. Trying to get a lot of Reese Olson because I like the organization. I like the development. I think that there's a real path forward where he becomes just like a rock solid, like SP3 type of arm in your fantasy teams. His teammate is your number 69th ranked pitcher. Arguably, I think now he's no longer arguable. I think he is just the top starting pitcher in the minor leagues. It's Jackson Jobe. I have a gut feeling that we're going to see Jobe on like a Paul Skeens type of timeline in 2025. And it wouldn't surprise me if we get a Paul Skeens type of season where like he comes up in June and is just so right from the jump.
It could be.
He ended the year in the bullpen for the Tigers, to get innings and to help their bullpen out. I think he starts the year in the minor leagues in the rotation. But I think he's I think he's up by the summer, right? I mean,
provided
he continues to pitch as well as he has been. Do you think he's not as MLB ready as Skeens, or what?
Yeah, I do. I think Skeens just was like, I'm doing this through all college, and like I did the same thing and everything else, and like he just came up and just did his thing. Save for the debut, which is always going to be weird, the debut. Jackson Jobe, I want to see more. I'm very curious because the pitch shape metrics that I get for Jackson Jobe, not nearly as impressive as I thought they were going to be. And I look at, say, the four-seamer with about 6 feet of extension, a little bit more, 6.2, which is like, wait, hold on a second. That was supposed to be, that's not good. I want that 97 to feel like 98, 99, not really actually like 95, 96. And it's average, but like slightly above average flat attack angle, so 1.2 adjusted VA, but also 17 inches of vert. So you have above average attack angle, you have great vert, elite velocity, just below average extension. I'm like, oh, I didn't want that one thing. That one thing just messes me up a little bit, but it's really coming down to like the cutter, the changeup, the sweeper. We haven't really seen it enough. Are those secondaries that he can really just get endless whiffs with and strikes with? I don't quite know yet. Also saw him as a reliever, which isn't quite fair because it doesn't showcase how you would normally see him. Inside rotation, the velocity as well, because he's going max effort as a reliever. So I'm just excited to get more data on him and get a better sense of his whole picture. I do think that Jackson Jobe, when he does start, is going to be a guy that you're going to want to roster and have on your fantasy teams. I don't think anyone should expect the Paul Skeens kind of elevation. Skeens throws harder. His splinker is the pitch that I just did not realize how absurd it is for Skeens. And Jackson Jobe doesn't really have that. I remember when I first saw him in the spring of last year, like very briefly, I think we got like one game of it or something, and it was just lights out absurdity with 4 pitches, and that was what the scouting report was. But there's a difference between hearing things and maybe one inning or so than actually watching a guy in full for multiple starts in the majors. And then I was completely wrong in that Skeens is just so good. So with Jackson Jobe, I have him here because, look, it's a binary thing in the beginning. Are you going to want to stash him? Probably. But I really want to insist you don't want to stash him the entire year. It's what we kind of did during spring training last year. We're thinking, oh man, Jackson Jobe's going to be here, and he never showed up. Obviously, he had that injury too, but that wasn't fun. And value now is worth 2 times value later. So if you're thinking, no, he's going to be up by, I don't know, April 20th or something like that, maybe May 1st, then it's also in June 1st, and that's 2 months that you could have been getting other things in. Who knows if Jackson Jobe would have still been available even on the waiver wire. And who knows how good it's going to be when he does arrive. Is it going to really be that big league winner? So don't lean too heavy in stashing Jackson Jobe. But if you have the open spot, sure. And I'm fine with it before the season starts. But if he's on the rotation, then I think you can kind of move on.
Yeah. I mean, my thing with Skeens was more, not that saying he's going to put up the year Skeens had, that I think the timeline
I'm with you.
And obviously the pitching as well as Skeens, in the sense that he would pitch well enough to maintain a spot in the rotation, that once he's up, he's going to be up and be a formidable MLB starter. Right. But yeah, I'm intrigued by Jobe. If, deeper leagues where you can really, you have the luxury to stash for 2+ months, he might be worth it. A starting pitching prospect who might be up sooner than Jobe just because of need is an interesting guy who I think not as many people know about if you're just, if you don't play dynasty leagues or keeper leagues or whatever, because Noah Schultz of the Chicago White Sox really kind of emerged this year. He wasn't really on a lot of radars before this year. Now I believe he's universally considered across whatever site you're on, one of the top 5 pitching prospects in baseball. And I think that I don't know if he for sure will break camp with the White Sox. But I think that there's an outside chance. I mean, he's 21 years old, giant 6'9" lefty. He did those 61 innings in Double-A. So I think we could be looking at like starting the year in Triple-A at kind of like the worst case scenario for Schultz. And he's knocking on the door right now.
I mean, yeah. Noah Schultz, I remember having him last year in my top 400, I think, just a note being like, oh, he's really good, but like, you're not going to see him. But he's really good. Yeah, we actually saw Uncle Ted here on our live YouTube stream, just talking endlessly about how Noah Schultz is the next Randy Johnson 20 times. So we got you, Uncle Ted. We told you, we read this. Go check us out on the YouTube channel, guys, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss one of these live streams in the future. But Noah Schultz is throwing mid 90s to upper 90s velocity with filthy sliders from the left side, and does so without issuing tons of walks. Like, that's okay. The White Sox are in this weird situation where, well, first of all, they might be sold. That would be really cool. I would hope that happens for White Sox fans everywhere. I mean, the fact that Benintendi was the most expensive contract they ever got is just, there you go. That's it. And I don't know if even if there is a spot for Noah Schultz, if they would do it, based on how the CBA is structured. I don't think the reward for AL Rookie of the Year is enough to push Schultz and lose a year of team control potentially. I got to think that they'll be saying like, he needs more time in AAA, and they come up in June, something along those lines, just to ensure that they have that extra year of control. And Noah Schultz is going to be really good though. Yeah. I mean, it's a case of like Nick Lodolo, but harder, like harder velocity Nick Lodolo, which means that he can throw more in the zone with confidence and not try and nitpick around it. So yeah.
The question for me is going to be that change up. I just shout out to Chris Clegg over at Dynasty Dugout. I read a lot of his stuff. I don't know that you need it. I mean, that's the question when you get to MLB hitters, right? Is he's a fastball slider guy. It's a sweepier slider. He does throw the slider all over the plate. He'll throw it front door. He'll throw it back door. He'll throw it to righties. He'll throw it to lefties. It's clearly working, and it's clearly enough in the minors. The question is, as a left-handed pitcher with a sweepier slider, does it have the same success rate in the majors? And if it doesn't to righties, where it's not going to be a bad pitch, but if it's not as elite against righties as it currently is in the minors, does he have enough confidence in that changeup, which he doesn't really throw a lot, to just give righties something else to also look at to prevent having some significant splits there?
I have a question, Eric. I have multiple questions, but one of them, who's your favorite lefty?
I love Shane McClanahan, man.
No, it's not Shane McClanahan. He's not your favorite lefty.
What?
No.
You gonna tell me who my favorite lefty is?
Yes.
Who do you think my favorite lefty is?
Come on, it's Chris Sale. And
I mean, I don't. Yes, I like Chris Sale.
Yes, you just said there you go. And Chris Sale essentially didn't have his best changeup. It was fastball slider with the sweepier slider, and called strikes all day and getting whiffs with it and
for sure
hard. And also, I see Garrett Crochet, who had a change for like one game to like stop the Twins because they needed to deal with a changeup once, and it's like, fine, here it is. But then just went fastball cutter. It didn't even really need the big breaking ball that he had earlier on. And I think with a guy like Schultz, who, if he's 6'7", 6'9", right? I would hope that means that he gets really good extension. And if it does, that means that the changeup, I mean, yes, would still be great. And I talk about all the time, lefties, this is a changeup league. You got to have that if you're a lefty. We've seen many examples, I think, of if you have just an elite skill set of a top of the line fastball, with a top of the line breaking ball that works against both left-handed and right-handed, that you can be fine with this without it. I would love it. I also want to mention that guys that are more side army than Reagans and Skubal and Tyler Anderson are going to have a tougher time with that changeup because it's going to be more on the side of the ball. And we always say you got to turn over the changeup. That is, you got to get on top of it. And the best changeups are the ones that come from pitchers who get on top of the ball best. And Schultz isn't one of those. Chris Sale actually does get more on top of the ball, I think, than Schultz does. So it's something to note. I don't think that will quite turn around, but maybe it does. Maybe he does develop that pitch. That'd be really unfair. I would really hope, honestly, that Noah Schultz gets a cutter. And if you tell me that he has a big sweeping slider, then the cutter would actually be the good bridge pitch that he would need.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because Crochet, that cutter is significantly harder. It's about 10 miles an hour harder than where Schultz throws his slider right now.
Right.
But yeah, listen, Chris Sale, that would be a top tier level comparison. It would be great if we could see it happen. Anyway,
I mean,
I'm bullish on Noah Schultz. I hope it works.
Yeah, I'm all for this. Is exactly the perfect situation. Just take him and see if it does it. If you go with him out of camp. Also, Randy Johnson. Yeah, not really a change up. It was a fastball slider and just destroyed everyone forever.
Fair.
So there you go.
Shoot for those comps. We're gonna give you more exciting young prospects on the next episode because there is a continuation of this tier. So make sure you tune in to check that out on the next episode of On the Corner. I am Eric Samulski, the Pelican.
I'm Nick Pollack, the Lion.
And we'll see you on another episode of On the Corner.
One more. We'll do one more, and then we'll do 5 the next time.
Okay.
You got 330 out. I know.
Yeah.
No. It would be like 350 at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to start it right at 46, just so we have it clear. Actually, let's do 45. Boom. All right. Ready? And hello and welcome to On the Corner, the official podcast of pitcherlist.com. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined, as always, by the man himself, Nick Pollack, as we continue working through his top 200 starting pitchers, 5 at a time. Please make sure to go check that out if you have not yet. Obviously, you'll get a lot of tidbits in the blurbs in that. Nick put in tons of work. We'll give you a little bit of extra added context here with some episodes that you can continue to check in on throughout the entirety of the offseason. Nick, hey, I didn't even let you talk. How you doing?
Hi. What is happening?
I'm good.
Yes, we're continuing this on, and really we're continuing the tier of the young upside guys that we are hoping show up. Early in the season, we had Jackson Jobe, we had Noah Schultz, and now we have number 71. Who is that, Eric?
Yes, number 71, continuing this trend, is Kumar Rocker.
Oh my gosh.
Such an interesting path to the major leagues for Kumar Rocker, who was drafted by the Mets and then didn't get signed by the Mets because of an arm injury, and then wound up getting drafted later by the Rangers, and then there was recovery from the injury. He looked really great in the upper levels of the minors this year. Had a couple starts at the major league level that did not go as well as we were hoping. Was a very trendy streamer at the end of the season because of some really enticing matchups and didn't quite deliver. But we assume, given the fact that he got a shot, that the Rangers are at least going to let him compete for a rotation spot heading into next year. And so why are you bullish? I guess you're kind of bullish. You're putting him in a tier with guys like Jackson Jobe and Noah Schultz, who are kind of like premier minor league pitcher stashes. So I guess you feel Rocker is similar in value.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're going to see him in spring training. If he gets a job out of camp, I want to give it a ride. I don't like it as much as Jobe and Schultz, but I feel like it's the next one of, oh, hey, here's an elite strikeout guy that honestly showcased more control and command than I thought we would get from Kumar Rocker. In the short time I saw him, maybe I'm just projecting what I wanted to see, but I certainly felt watching Rocker that he was able to execute as he wanted to and be more, be able to harness what he throws better than most prospects with overpowering stuff when I first see them. And it's a 4-seamer slider sinker combination. The slider, I gotta say, I could not believe how many times I saw him execute back foot sliders to lefties. I was shocked. It's something that you should be doing if you are a power pitcher, 4-seamer slider guy. Garrett Cole did this endlessly and actually turned away from it recently. But Kumar Rocker continuously was able to put that slider down and in underneath the danger zone of lefties. That is the bottom left corner of the strike zone. You got to go right underneath that. It's so tempting every single time for a lefty, and they always swing over it and miss. Kumar Rocker slider is ridiculously good. You have a 4-seamer at 7 feet of extension and 96 mile per hour velocity. The thing is, terrible this drops. It's a sink. So it's a little strange. Sometimes I say, hey, look, 14 inches, 15 inches of vert, fine, whatever, it's average. I'm willing to overlook that with the extension. When it's so low, it's a little strange, and I'm not sure if I can buy it as much, because essentially it's just helping the barrel catch up to the ball. When you throw that higher up, the less vert it has, the bat is underneath the ball until it isn't when you try and swing upstairs. So that might hamper him a little bit. I'm really curious more so about the development, what gets added for Kumar Rocker. Is that a cutter? If you have extension, generally cutter shows up. Generally changeup shows up. And only saw 1% changeup usage in the 11 innings that we saw, 11.2. I wonder if there is something else that gets added for Kumar Rocker. But at the end of the day, the fastball sinker slider combination is still very good. And especially one that is not so wild. You're going to say, Nick, he had an 11% walk rate, he had 3 walks and 4 walks, and 2 walks and 4 walks. I know. MLB debut stuff, I get it. Trust me, don't look at Rocker and think, oh no, he's going to have this ridiculous walk rate. No, he was also limited to under 75 pitches in each of his 3 games.
That's true.
First season as well. It's pretty much all of them were debuts. You can treat it those 3 games. I see an overpowering pitcher. I see someone who has actually a sinker that he throws the right-handers really effectively. It's very interesting to me. And he got that pitch inside, by the way, arm side location against right-handers 80% of the time. That's 96th percentile if it were a larger sample. You only threw 34 of them against right-handers, but you get my point. He's like right there. So I'm excited about it. I hope Kumar Rocker showcases the same stuff that he had and more. And it's very possible that he does. And also we go, wait, this guy is just absolute filth. And we go, yeah, he is.
Yes. Filth, people. Utter filth. Really intrigued to see if he does get that shot in the rotation. I think that there's a really good chance of that. And so he'd be somebody that is worth speculating on. I think that the next pitcher, your 72nd ranked pitcher, is far less likely to get a shot out of the gate. But then again, we might have said that about his teammate, Jared Jones, heading into this season. Yeah. And so Bubba Chandler may be coming to create a 3-headed monster at the top of that Pittsburgh Pirates rotation. I would say that coming into the 2024 season, I feel like Bubba Chandler was maybe a trendier pitching prospect than Jared Jones was. And so what do you like about Bubba Chandler? And do you actually think that he's like 4th best of this tier, or do you just like he belongs in the glob with them? You don't really have a preference?
Yeah, I really struggled to rank Bubba Chandler, and I don't know. I mean, guys, the fact that I'm ranking and having opinions on prospect pitchers is still weird to me because I used to just say, like, I don't know, guys. Prospects are prospects. We'll talk about it when we see more of them and everything like that. We have more data now, which is nice, but it's still like, I don't know. And with Bubba Chandler, he throws 96, 97 with pretty much like average to above average shape. It's not the most IVB. It's 16 inches, which is good, but it's not whatever. It's 6.7 of extension, which is good, but whatever. It's slightly flat, 1.2 high adjusted VA. Again, good. And like all of that is above average, which makes it plus together. And if he's able to continue with a high location with that 4-seamer, that should cook if he has the secondaries really to back it up. And I don't know if he does. That's really what it is. The slider is more like a cutter than it is a wipeout slider pitch, from what I understand. The changeup, it seems like it gets too far on the side of the ball to really make that a demonstrative changeup for lefties to fear. And I'm waiting for that real secondary to appear that says, okay, look, Bubba Chandler establishes that high fastball. They can't handle this one either. It's just overwhelming. And I don't know if he has that. He could. I would say that the Pirates also, they shouldn't promote Bubba Chandler. I'm still shocked that they promoted Jared Jones. I really, truly am. And we'll see what they do. I don't know. You have Mitch Keller there defiantly. And then you have Luis Ortiz, who they're not going to take out.
You have Mitch Keller.
Yes. And then you have Luis Ortiz as the 4, very clearly. So that 5th, it doesn't feel like that Bubba Chandler is going to demand that. The Pirates are probably just gonna be like, no, we'll just go with this, Toby, and that's cool, and call it a day. But we'll see. Monitor this one. If Bubba Chandler gets a start, like, you should give it a shot and see how it goes.
Yeah. Maybe I'm coming around on Pirates pitching development. I mean, at least in the sense that like I was avoiding them totally in years past, and now we're actually seeing them produce some legitimate pitching prospects. Again, I take my cues from a lot of pitching prospect guys that I trust, and a lot of them are very intrigued by Bubba Chandler, and so I am as well. And I would be taking some flyers in leagues where you can bench stash. And he's a guy I'm watching intently in spring training, just to see if he feels like he's MLB ready and what his timeline will be. The next guy also maybe battling for a starting rotation job. You might think that your number 73 ranked starting pitcher, Taj Bradley, is locked into the starting rotation in Tampa Bay. But with Shane McClanahan healthy, with Shane Baz back, with Drew Rasmussen back, with Jeffrey Springs back, with Ryan Pepio there, Taj Bradley is going to have to earn a spot. We saw that magical 8-start stretch over the summer where fastballs were located high, splitters were down in the zone. Everybody thought the breakout is here. He looked tremendous. And then we saw those command issues rear their head for Taj Bradley. And I talked about this at First Pitch Arizona. We've talked about this on the podcast before. When we say command for Taj Bradley, we don't mean like the walk rate spikes. We mean the location of his pitches within the zone is imprecise in a way that the way that he wants to attack, or the way that he now wants to attack, with fastballs up and the splitters below the zone, which is we both kind of agree is a great approach for him, but it requires the precision of command to keep that fastball up in the zone to allow the splitter to do its work out of the zone low. And when he doesn't have that precise command, he starts getting hit hard. Hitters can lay off the pitches he wants them to chase, and it leads to a lot of poor results that we saw after that hot stretch. And I'm willing to buy shares late in drafts because I see the path forward, but we've just kind of been doing the same dance with Bradley for a while now, and I just don't know if he's gonna actually figure it out.
Yeah, the comp that we should be really giving for Taj Bradley is like a worse version of Kodai Senga, because it's four-seamer cutter split, right? And I'm surprised to say it, but the cutter that gave him so much trouble in 2023 actually was the savior of the season for him in 2024 as the really good pitch that induced weak contact. So with Taj Bradley, a lot of times I watch him and just go, he doesn't know where this thing is going. It's a scatter plot of a shotgun blast of four-seamers and splitters and cutters. When he was in his best groove, he had the cutter mixed in well. He had splitters actually down in like the bottom half of the zone and underneath, and the four-seamer in the middle and up, and they kind of combined. But it was good actually of just, hey, look, you don't know what this is out of my hand, this four-seamer that looks like it's the top of the zone. No, it's the cutter. No, it's the splitter. That is how Taj Bradley needs to succeed. That is how Kodai Senga succeeds. But the difference is, yeah, Kodai Senga can throw that cutter all day for a strike. He can also get that forkball way down in the dirt whenever he wants. Taj Bradley can't. And this is a rank where I'm just showcasing I don't want to touch it. I don't want to deal with this. This is the hipster, headache-inducing pitcher stifling the entire roster. And this is also where I started a new tier. This is separate from the other guys, the young ones of Bubba Chandler and Kumar Rocker and Schultz and Job. Why? Because those, you have the understanding early what we're going to get. And even if Taj Bradley shows up and is just like, man, my cutter's amazing, I'm putting my splitter down, fastball here, I say, that is awesome. You deserve the success that you're having. I have no idea if that's who you're going to be in like 2 weeks. And that's the problem. That's the issue I have with Taj Bradley. Not that I'm saying he's destined to not help your team, is that we just won't know what his destiny is, and more than a coin flip during the season, in my view. And I hate that. It's stress. I'm adding the stress and anxiety of rostering someone like Taj Bradley. In your deeper leagues, you have to go after Taj Bradley because we know he's going to get strikeouts. You know it, and it's harder to find that consistent of a strikeout. I don't know, supply. I can't think of words today, but Taj Bradley, I hope it works.
I would go with source. Strikeout source.
Yeah, source is good. Also, by the way, I really hate in like any sci-fi movie where they have some sort of military stuff involved, they always say we need supplies. Like, it just drives me nuts. You'll hear in every single drama or show, supplies. Oh yeah, so we need this and this and supplies. Like, what are those? Is it medical equipment? Is it like scissors? Is it bandages?
Supplies.
Is it supplies? It's just supplies, but like that's just like the blanket word of like, okay, in the script, we gotta say that they need things, so supplies. It's what they do. Anyway, Taj Bradley is just gonna drive me up the wall, and I hope he doesn't drive you up the wall either. That's all.
Yes. And so I will be avoiding him as well in drafts. The pitcher I will not be avoiding in drafts is next up, but we're going to talk about him after this break. Your number 74th ranked starter was somebody that the beginning of the year we thought was putting it all together. It's Washington Nationals left-hander Mackenzie Gore. We thought it was happening, Nick. We thought it was happening. The bottom dropped out. But did we see enough in the early stages to at least produce a glimmer of what Gore could become, a glimmer of like the path for him to have sustained MLB success? Remembering that I'm looking up his age right now. I remember that he's very young. He's still 25 years old. I know Mackenzie Gore has been, in the discussions for a long time because he was a top pitching prospect for a while, but still a young starting pitcher, still technically not in his peak or prime. Are you optimistic that the flashes of what we saw earlier can be maintained for Mackenzie Gore?
You want to know the weird comp I have for Mackenzie Gore? You're going to hate it.
Well, then no, I don't want to know it.
You actually gave this pitcher as a comp for someone else in one of our previous podcasts.
I did?
Maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was someone else. It's Blake Snell. And the reason I give that is because the changeup, sweeper, slider all have absurdly good swing strike rates from this past season, at least 17% in all of them, if not above 21%. And he throws them under 60% strikes. And so what happens is that the four-seamer has to do it all, and it has to be inside the zone. And it's a great four-seamer. Right. I mean, this is a 7 feet of extension at times 97, like earlier in the season, and then it fell down to 95 by the end, which was obviously worrisome. But it would still be a 12% strike rate and swing strike rate rather. And if he has those secondaries to help him and actually bait guys into swinging properly, it's game over. He actually is able to just destroy a lineup. The consistency of Mackenzie Gore is what drives us up the wall. It would even be game to game of just a ridiculously good start, a ridiculously bad start. It would be complete coin flip, headache-inducing pitcher, stuffing the entire roster. Yes, he is a hipster. So I also, in doing this rank, I mean, it's right with Taj Bradley, of course, the same idea of I don't know if you've actually figured it out enough. I don't like these on the Nationals either. Defense really hurt him last season. He has a plus 26 hit luck on the four-seamer, which is just, oh boy. And it's because it was independent. You have to realize that hit luck is not focused on the rest of the arsenal. It's just that singular pitch. And because Gore didn't have enough backing up that four-seamer, guys were just sitting on it a ton. And then the defense also let him down. So I struggle with it. I think there is premier talent in that arm. I think he's, guess what? Needs a cutter because he's an extension boy at 96. Sorry, a Mr. Fantastic, Eric. I love that, and I just keep forgetting it. I just like saying extension boy. Okay,
I know you do.
But he really needs to figure out the secondaries. Mackenzie Gore, man, you gotta have high strike rates on one of these. You have to. It's just that simple. And I don't know if we are 62% on the curveball. I hope so. Again, I remember seeing that out of the zone so much in games, and all of a sudden one game there it is. Yeah. It's unclear, and I hope that Sean Doolittle can help out some more. I also don't like the fact that it took so long for Mackenzie Gore to finally throw some high fastballs, but it was still just at 49% and not 55% high location. Maybe that's a product of him having to go more in the zone, but it really should be going higher with that flat attack angle, this extension, all that kind of stuff. He's missing that extra bit of command and specialization for Gore. It could be there early on, but it also faded in a big way and went on this past year. Could very well fade again. And I'm just not as confident as I want to be Mackenzie Gore. But yes, I acknowledge the skills, like the innate stuff is there for him to really explode.
And this is, again, we've talked about this on previous episodes. This is a time in the drafts where you get into these ranks where, like, you're taking these gambles on a pitcher like this, over, some of the more kind of like, people might be like, well, why isn't Sean Manaea ranked up high right now? Why isn't, Brandon Pfaadt here or whatever? And it's just like the upside of somebody like Mackenzie Gore is high enough that you take this gamble at the end of your draft. Again, Nick and I both rank for 12 teamers in particular. You take this gamble because if it clicks, you're getting the starting pitcher you got at the beginning of this year, which was a great starting pitcher. And then if it doesn't, you can just say, okay, it's not going to happen. I'm going to move on. I'll find whoever on the waiver wire, but its upside is worth chasing. I also believe in the upside of your number 75th ranked starter. I have him ranked one spot below Jeffrey Springs. And I'm curious where, I mean, you don't have Springs that much higher than your number 75th ranked starter, Jesus Luzardo. Coming off a back injury that sidelined him for basically the whole second half of the season. I think we have kind of established that Jesus Luzardo is who he is a little bit, or is who he is since he has come over to the Marlins. I think that there was some continued hope that like there was another level to unlock. But I think like, listen, the 3.23 or 3.32 ERA in 2012, a 3.58 ERA in 2023, basically like a 28 or 29% strikeout rate in those 2 years. With a whip, you know, the whip was much worse in 2023. So maybe you're looking at like a 1-2 whip or slightly lower. That is a viable starting pitcher in a lot of formats because the ERA doesn't hurt you. The whip is like, but it's not awful. And the strikeout rates are really good. And then you've got like trade rumors circling all around him last year. If he's healthy, I believe this is the final year of his contract. So if he's healthy, the Marlins may unload him and then you might get a team context upgrade. I think if people are down on Luzardo because he was mediocre and then got hurt last year, I love taking shares of him late in drafts.
Yeah, so Luzardo is maddening. And really the best asset that he has is the changeup against right-handers, which has continuously earned massive swinging strike rate numbers, 25% in 2023 against left-handers, I should say, is 25%, 18% against right-handers, across 24% usage in 23 and 22% in the same amount of usage this past year before he got hurt. That is the moneymaker for him. The problem is that the four-seamer and the slider get hit. The four-seamer comes with horrific extension. Mm-hmm. You know, if you guys have been listening to me talk about extension, I think it's a huge, huge deal because it really does aid in extending the tunnel essentially for pitches before batters can really discern which one is which. And if you have a really low extension, I think it just kind of makes a lot of these pitches more obvious. Essentially, it's essentially like the velocity, but I think a little bit different. And what's so wild to me is that you guys know, okay, Nick loves 7 feet of extension. That's kind of like, oh man, there's a wonderful round number. He doesn't like seeing like under 6.5. So just imagine what I feel when I see that Jesus Luzardo's extension is 5.7. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is why someone who's thrown 95, 96, 97 on his fastball last 3 years has had swing strike rates of 6% on this pitch, that he gets destroyed. And then you have the slider that he throws far too much in the zone against right-handers, which also just gets pummeled by them. It's a tough scenario because yes, the slider does do well against lefties. Yes, the changeup does do well against righties, but the four-seamer can't be trusted. Mm-hmm. And also utilizes too many of these sliders. 27% usage against righties. That's more than the changeup in this past season. So I see Luzardo as this sink or swim, prototypical cherry bomb that is now a hipster who is going to give you that 8 strikeout game and then giving you 6 earned runs in the next one. His HIPper 9 for 5 years has been above 8. Above 8. If you see that 8 number, you're like, whip is not going to be good. Yeah. You just can't. And the only exception was 2022, which was 6.2 with a 2.54 BABIP. And there's just no way that is getting replicated. I don't know if the Miami Marlins defense was absurdly good in that time. It was 100 innings of that. That's why you saw the 104 whip. That is not coming back for Jesus Luzardo. And I think this is just, look, if you need strikeouts, you got Bradley, you got Luzardo, you got Mackenzie Gore. Those are your, like, I'm going to sacrifice things in my whip for strikeouts, and I hope the ERA isn't so terrible. That is your play here. But I would be very surprised if we got a massive breakout Jesus Luzardo season where it was just more consistent and more helpful than harmful, because it's just too bad of a fastball, and the slider and changeup don't do enough really to nullify. And the slider just gets hit too hard. Changeup's got to be thrown more. Throw like 40% of the time against righties. Okay, maybe we can talk then. Maybe
probably not. Maybe we can chat. Jesus,
we did though. We did chat back in like 2021.
Listen, he threw 11 cutters in 2023, and they were not good. But maybe he starts working that cutter back in. Who knows? But yeah, I'm with you on it. I think I would love the Marlins to maybe trade him in the offseason as opposed to waiting, for a bit. He's coming off an injury, so that seems highly unlikely. But I just am suggesting it in the sense of like, I think Luzardo in a better team context, if you're looking at like a 3.50 ERA pitcher with a 1-2 whip and good strikeouts who could get wins too, becomes a little more interesting. You play him in certain matchups wherever, but I don't think he's ever gonna reach the highs that we kind of thought when he was coming up with Oakland, like he could hit. I don't think it's there.
I don't touch hipsters. I don't want to draft guys that I will not know what to do with.
Well, I moved out of.
It's too big of a pitcher to drop or something. I don't want to do this.
I moved out of Williamsburg because I also don't deal with hipsters.
Headache-inducing pitcher stuffing the entire roster. Okay.
Oh,
we thought of as a droppable cherry bomb last year. That's what hipster is now.
Yeah.
Cherry bombs are guys you hold on to the entire year.
You do. You do it. Nick has updated the terms. You can also go check that out when you go through the full article over on pitcherlist.com. We're going to continue talking about the rest of Nick's top 200 as we go through. Actually, as we chatted at the beginning, we're probably going to get through like 120, 140-ish of these guys on these podcasts. But again, like, watch on YouTube, talk to Nick or I on Twitter. If there are particular guys as we get through, we might do 120 and then take like requests for the 121 to 200 of people that you guys really want us to touch base on, and we can do an episode where we get through like 10 of those kind of guys and call it.
So exactly.
Always feel comfortable reaching out to us on Twitter or Blue Sky. Just let us know. And we'll try to make sure we talk about as many of the pitchers as you want.
Absolutely.
So that's going to do it for this episode of On the Corner. I am your host, Eric Samulski, the Pelican.
I am Nick Pollack, the Lion. And
we will see you on a future episode, a next episode of On the Corner.
Goodbye. Get out of here. Bye-bye.